So as we join back, can we all mute so we don't have the feedbacks? Let me check that. Okay, I'm trying to get across to Kingsley so he knows he's no longer on the call. So he's not teaching us when we're not there. Okay. Okay. I think I will just mute everybody now that I have the power.
Hi, Dom. Hello.
Yeah,
Hello, Chris, when you are there.
Yeah, we're here. We had a feeling you would have been teaching yourself.
Hello.
Yeah. So okay, so we are all back, and so I'll make you the host again. We can hear you, Kingsley.
Okay.
Fire and I don't know what you guys are. Yeah, we can hear you. I'm just trying to mute everybody, and but I want to make you the host now. I'll make you the host, so you are host. But unmute yourself because I mute everybody at first, so you can continue now.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So we're at the point of giving an overview of what a process validation will look like and where the other elements of validation will come in. So just to explain this a bit, I'll use a handset. We all use handsets. So you want to buy a handset, you find out that what Dominic likes in handsets is anything that is iPhone. He doesn't like Techno. Me, I'm a Samsung fan. Somebody else, Louis, is anywhere but left face. So you might give him a Nokia 3310. It's okay by him. But one thing that is unique is that we all have what we want in phones. So we know that, and we have it at the back of our minds. But in validation, you put it down, you write it down. That's the original requirement specification. So I want a Samsung phone. I've specified the model. I want the phone that has this thickness, this color. It must come with a pouch. It must come with a battery. It must come with a charger. All that specified. I put it down in writing. Now, I look out for vendors or manufacturers that can manufacture a Samsung phone. So I look out for the designs they have on either Jumia. That is a process of validation too. But at the point of me getting the vendor, the person will send me a catalog, and that catalog will tell me this is the design of what they have. And now I have to compare that against my user requirements description. If it meets my user requirements description, I then go ahead to point, they will pick, and then they make a delivery. The elements that I expect, did it come with a pouch? Did it come with a charger? Did it come with an extra battery? If I ask for an extra battery, did it come with a manual? Did it come with an earphone? All those things you check at the point of receipt. Now, the same thing happens with manufacturing equipment. You do your user requirement specifications, you send it out to factories, and they send you their different designs, and you narrow down to one particular factory. You go to that factory, you do your site acceptance test, confirm that what they actually claim they are doing can be delivered to you on site. Then you come back and say, okay, fine, place the order, and they place the order. The equipment arrives your factory, and at the point, right from the point where you're opening the case for this equipment, you're looking at every element, the packing list of what came with that equipment. I want to confirm that they meet what you asked for in your user requirement specification. Now, The next thing is you mount this equipment, and after mounting, installation validation starts. So the first stage for every equipment qualification, the life cycle for every equipment qualification is that it goes through the DQ, the IQ, the OQ, and the PQ. So the DQ is the design qualification, where you're comparing your whatever the manufacturer says it can give you against your user requirements. The IQ is when you have installed on site. You now want to confirm that the installed equipment is exactly what you asked for, and it's occupying the space where you want it to occupy. So you look at the list, you look at the documentation that came with it, and you look at the spacing of where the equipment was installed. You now look at things like the mechanical requirements, the electrical requirements. You want to be sure that they're all meeting what you're specified in your user requirements. You look at the safety requirements you ask for. Do they have audiovisual alarms? All these are things you look out for in an installation qualification exercise. And these you capture in your protocols. So all these elements, the electrical requirements, the mechanical requirements, you ask for things that would confirm what you requested from your user requirements specification. And you have the engineer confirming that these things will deliver as expected in your protocol. So you have spaces for each of them, and then you challenge them. Once this is done, you move on to the operational qualification. So for the operational qualification, you want to be sure that you did not have any hitches during your installation qualification. So if there are deviations, if there are challenges you had during your installation qualification, you want to be sure that those deviations have been justified, and you've already had CAPAs to close out those deviations before you move on to the operational qualification. Where you have unjustified CAPAs, you cannot move on to operational qualifications. But once that is done, you're now start. That is the preliminary step of your operational qualification, confirming that there are no gaps during your IQ. So during your OQ, you now want to confirm your operational checks, which goes in line with the design that the manufacturer has said he has designed the equipment. So you'll be looking at checks in line with the operation manual of the manufacturer in most cases. So they'll tell you, plug this socket to this position, and you will see an audiovisual response, a beep and a sound. You do that and you check for that response. That's an operational check. They'll tell you, look at this LCD, press this button for 5 seconds. You'll get this response. That's an operational check. So there are different operational checks that you would have to go through. You would have highlighted it in your operational check qualification protocol, and then you get responses from them. At the end of the exercise, going through all your operational checks, which includes safety checks. So you want to check that your machine guarding is effective. They will tell you, put on the equipment. The moment you open the door, the equipment shuts down, and you have maybe a red light blinking somewhere, or you have an audio response blinking somewhere. That's the safety check during operation. So you do all those checks, and you confirm whether they responded as expected or not in your protocol. And that's you taking results, and you're generating documented evidence that proves that this equipment is performing as expected. So that's what you do during operation. Working in line with the operator's manual to say, you operate this, you get this response, you check, and you confirm that the response is satisfactory. Where there are deviations, you raise that deviation and you ask the equipment manufacturer to confirm whether those deviations can be closed out or not. Now, once you're done with all the operational qualificational checks and you have no stance, you move on to performance qualification. Now, in performance qualification, what do you check? You are checking for accuracy of responses. So you an equipment that will deliver 16 bottles in 2 seconds. You want to be sure that you also in 2 seconds do not have any quality defects. So you also check for the performance in terms of the quality output of what you're expecting from that equipment. So you go through these life cycles and you define all the things you want to check at each stage, at the DQ stage, the IQ stage, the OQ stage, and the PQ stage. You tick them out and you confirm if they met the acceptance criteria before you now write your validation report. But take note that, please, your manufacturing equipment all falling under this. Your laboratory equipment all fall under this. Now, in terms of utility and facility, they all go through this life cycle. So all those things that we validate go through the life cycle of IQ, OQ, PQ. Some people will say, why are you leaving out DQ? DQ is more of the documentation exercise. You just check documents. You raise a document and you check a document. But the key place where you come to carry out tests are during the IQ, the OQ, and the PQ. Now, for test methods, you're talking about process validation. Well, now you look at the point where you have qualified your equipment, whether it's a laboratory equipment, manufacturing equipment. You now want to go into testing proper. You want to test the product. You want to test raw materials. You use laboratory equipment. You want to manufacture the product itself. You release the raw material. You want to manufacture the product itself. You use manufacturing equipment. You now have to go through that procedure that tells you this is what to do when you want to test. Take 5 grams of the sample, mix it with 10 mils of the solvent, check it in the spectrophotometer, take the reading and use this formula to calculate. That is the test procedure. You want to confirm that that test procedure would definitely give you what is expected. So you now need to check the accuracy of that test method. You need to check the linearity of that test method. You need to check the precision of that test method. For manufacturing process, you have a mixing tank, mixing a 5,000 kg liter. And you want to be sure that this mixing tank gives you a homogeneous mix after 30 minutes, after 50 minutes. You want to be sure that the mixture at the top of the tank, at the middle of the tank, and at the base of the tanks are homogeneous. So you take samples and you challenge this test. At the end of the checks, you have generated documented evidence that confirm that that process, the equipment, the manufacturing equipment, the testing equipment, the manufacturing process, the testing process are all validated and they are giving you reliable results. Don't leave out cleaning validation. So for facilities, let's say for instance, a company that produces Coke and Fanta and they're using the same manufacturing tank. If you don't clean properly, one Coke. So you want to be sure that your cleaning procedure, hot water, hold it for 30 minutes, do this. That's the process. But you want to be sure that that process would reliably and consistently remove all all unwanted materials before you manufacture the next variant, which is not of the same color, fragrance from the previous product. So you want to validate your cleaning procedure. So all this is done. And once you do that, you write your validation report and then you conclude whether your process has been validated or not. So there are different life cycles for different validations. We talked about equipment. You need to go through IQ, OQ, PQ. So this table just gives a summary of what I just explained. You have the prerequisites of what you want to do during your qualification, and then you have the team. For OQ, you also have the same thing. What are the prerequisites and what are things you want to check before you go into OQ, and what are things you do during OQ, and then which people are the people that you need to form that team of qualification. Now, for your protocol, for qualification protocol, this is specifically looking at equipment now. For equipment protocol, these are the key headers you must describe in your equipment protocol. You must have an objective, you must have a scope, you must have a definition, that's the roles, the people that will be carrying out the activities and what they'll be doing. You must have reference documents, you must have definitions of what terms of definitions, who is going to be conducting analysis, what is an NC, what is a qualification, what is procedure for handling non-conformance should also be described. So if you have a non-conformance, what do you do? Do you stop? Do you continue? You define all that in your protocol. Now, the qualification process proper and the steps you should take is the part where you now define the key things as it relates to that stage in the equipment qualification life cycle. So for an IQ, these are the things you look at for an IQ. Like I mentioned earlier on, you start with the packing list, you look at the required documentations, you look at technical requirements, you look at electrical requirements, you look at mechanical requirements, you look at equipment utility and checks. So someone would ask, how do I go about carrying out electrical requirement checks? For every equipment that comes in, you have what we call electrical diagrams. And then you have an electrical engineer that follows these electrical diagrams to make connections regarding this equipment. So if you have an electrical engineer with you, you as a QA person will pick the electrical diagram and you ask him to show you where wire A110 links to wire 2-110. They will show you and you take it. So you're not supposed to do 100% of all the checks. You're only meant to do like 10% of the checks from the electrical diagram and you take it off as complied or not. But where there's a deviation in that check, in the 10% check, then you now decide whether you will do a 100% check or not. But take note, if any of these deviations happen, the equipment will not go, the equipment will not operate. You won't be able to use the equipment. So you'll be sure that the engineers would have done their due diligence to make sure that all these connections are done properly, else you will not even go into installation qualification proper. So for the acceptance criteria, you're looking at the manufacturer specification as well as your design qualification against your user requirement specification. So you want to be sure that all these are meeting what you raised. For an operational qualification check, these are the key things you look at. You want to be sure that you have the alarm system operating properly. Are they audiovisual? You want to be sure that if it's a filling equipment, it's filling according to the capacity that it's supposed to fill. So I have an equipment that fills 125 mil, 500 mil, 1 liter. I carry out checks against these volumes and be sure that I confirm with a weighing scale or a measuring cylinder that it's delivering as expected. You want to be sure that you check the equipment's reports. So if it has an HMI, it has a computer system, I've run this equipment for minutes, and it's supposed to give me 500 bottles. The equipment records that, yes, you ran the equipment for 4.9 minutes, and you received this number of bottles from the equipment. So all these checks are things you do during your OQ check, and then you document your findings. Now, again, your acceptance criteria here will be against your user requirement specification, against the manufacturer specification, but keenly against the manufacturer specification, because this is the manufacturer's design that you're looking at, but against what you want. So you confirm against the two. Now, for performance qualification checks, you want to be looking at the speed of the equipment. You want to be sure that the speed against the quality attributes are not varying. So if I run the equipment at its lowest speed, what is the quality I'm getting? If I'm running a capping machine, for instance, a filling and capping machine, for instance, that has a maximum speed of 72 bottles per minute, and it has a lowest speed of 10 bottles per minute. If I run that equipment at 10 bottles per minute, would I have capping issues? Would I have missing caps? If I run it at the maximum speed, would I have caps cracking? Or would I have labels misaligned? Things like that. Those are things you want to be sure that you're checking during your performance qualification checks. So that gives you an overview of what you're checking during equipment qualification, during IQ, OQ, and PQ. So you write your validation reports when you're done for all these IQ, OQ, PQs, and your validation reports would include none other than this. So you have an introduction that gives an overview of what the exercise was all about, and there's an executive summary that says, okay, we checked against IQ, PQ, and OQ, and there was no deviation, and everything was met. Then you now come further to define what were your results and what were your acceptance criteria. So your results against your acceptance criteria would show whether you satisfactorily met all the requirements. And when they did not meet, you need to define whether you came up with deviation kappas that justified why you need to go ahead with that validation. And then you conclude with appendices. Appendices are evidences of body checks. Sometimes you might need your diagrams, your P&ID drawings, your electrical drawings, your mechanical drawings, the manuals, the operators' manuals, the training records for operators during your equipment qualification. They all form part of your validation documents. Now, for manufacturing process validation, please, I'll be a bit fast. These are the elements that you want to see during manufacturing, but very, very key to note here is that you do a risk assessment against the flow process for the manufacturing process. Then you define 3 critical steps, and then you define where to pick samples from. So for manufacturing tablets, for instance, in the pharmaceutical world, you manufacture tablets in granules first. So you mix raw materials into granules, and then you now compress these granules into tablets, or you fill the granules into capsules. So if it's a dry syrup, you fill the granules into capsules, or you fill the granules into bottles. So in your manufacturing process, you want to define where would you be picking your samples. Is it during mixing alone, or you want to pick samples at mixing, and you want to compare what you pick at the mixing to the packed product. So you want to define your critical control points where you're picking samples, and you want to define what you'll be looking out for. So I've mixed in a mixer. Let's say Coke, for instance. I don't want to be using my own products. Let's say the manufacturer for Coke manufactures 5,000 liters of Coke every day as a batch. So you want to be sure that 5,000 liters, at the top, you have the same volume of caffeine as at the middle and as at the base. So you want to define how you pick your samples from the top of that mixing tank to the base of the mixing tank and to the middle of the mixing tank, and you compare the results. You define your acceptance criteria. So if I have the percent content, for instance, of say caffeine is about 5% content of the whole mix. So I want to get 5% at the top, 5% at the middle, 5% at the base. By the time I check these locations, and I want to do a correlative coefficient, like I want to know how close these results are. At the top, you might get a 4.9. At the middle, you might get 4.95. At the base, you might get 5. You now define your own acceptance criteria to confirm whether this mixing is homogeneous or not. So you use something like your RSD to confirm whether that mixing was homogeneous or not. So this is just an overview to show you that one of the ways you can pick out critical points to look at is draw a flow chart of your process and define what happens at each of those processes. So you have a risk assessment table that says, if I'm manufacturing soap, for instance, at the mixing stage, what is happening? What am I looking out for? So what are the things I need to test? So if I'm looking at the cutting stage, what is happening at the cutting stage? What's the criticality of that thing happening at the cutting stage? What influence does it have on the quality of the product? And what are the things I can check for? So this informs what you need to be checking at which manufacturing stage, at each stage of the manufacturing process, and confirm what acceptance criteria will justify that test at that location has proven that that stage had delivered what is meant to deliver. So this picture is just meant to show you locations doing in a mixer. So you have a Sigma mixer here for either soaps or tablets, and you have manufacturing vessels and storage vessels for liquid formulations. So you look at the locations for top, middle, bottom. Now, how someone would ask me, how would I collect my top? How would I collect my middle? How would I collect my base? But maybe because of time, I would probably discuss that during the question and answer section. So you have a process flow that describes all that, and then
because you have so many questions already.
Same with the,
Sorry to interrupt you, but just to let everybody know, so many people are putting in questions. I'm taking note of your questions so that you are not worried. We'll take the questions after the session. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm already taking notes. So I've copied them already.
Yeah. So that's why I'm trying to rush up. So for a test method validation, it goes through the same thing. You have your purpose of study, you have your materials, your reagents, your definitions. But for every test method validation, these are the key elements you must check for your test method. You must check whether that test method is linear, whether it's accurate, whether it's precise, whether it's robust. You want to check the limit of detection of that test method. You want to check the limit of condition of that test method. And you want to confirm that the test method is specific and selective for your analyte. If there are deviations, you highlight the deviations. And if there are you also need to state your conditions for validation in your protocol. And then you have a revision history for your protocol. So these are elements you look out for when it comes to method validation. So you focus on the areas of what are the performance parameters of that test method. And then you have acceptance criteria. So these are ICH standards for acceptance criteria for linearity, accuracy, precision, limit of detection, limit of condition. These are just generic acceptance criteria for them. But on a risk-based approach, you can define yours, but not too far away from the ICH guideline. So I need to go off this slide presentation, so that will be faster. I'll just be scrolling my slides from here. So for different test methods, you have the parameters you can check. So for a detection, for an identification test method, where you have to add, we said take 1 gram of a sample, add 2 mils of an acid, add 1 mil of an indicator, the whole reaction turns red. It's a qualitative test. You might not be doing an accuracy test for that. You don't need to do a precision test for that because it's just a quantitative test. So there are parameters you can test for in a quantitative test that you cannot test for in a qualitative test. So this table guides you as to what performance parameters you can be checking for different type of test methods. Now, once you're done with your test method validation, the same thing, you write a report, and these are the elements you have in your report and what must show in your validation report. For cleaning validation, so the same objective, scope, and all that, but noteworthy here, you need to focus on your cleaning process. What are the worst case products in your cleaning process? But take note here that you might have a dedicated line. So for someone that has a dedicated line, for instance, you only manufacture Coke in this manufacturing tank. You don't manufacture anything, it's only dedicated for Coke. Just like in our manufacturing plants, we have this dedicated manufacturing plant for ASL, Dettol and septic liquid, and we don't manufacture any other thing there. You might not define what the worst case product is because it's just dedicated to that product. But in a line where you manufacture different variants, where you have products with different colors, different fragrances, you need to define which product is your worst case product, because you cannot be doing clean validation for all the products. You now use that worst case product to define the products you use to confirm that if this cleaning procedure can remove this product from my surfaces, then I can guarantee that it can remove it from every other product line, or from every other product when I manufacture that product. So your worst case product must be defined, and there are criteria for you to define your worst case product. You also need to define your sampling techniques. Are you going to be taking a ring sample? When you finish cleaning, you just take a ring sample from the surface of the cleaning, or are you going to swab the surface and do some tests from your swabs? You also need to define the testing procedure you would use. Now, during test method validation, you are testing two of the parameters you are testing for are limit of detection and limit of quantitation. Your test method might not be able to detect the lowest possible concentration during cleaning. So you need to have validated your test method's limit of detection before you can define that test method as a suitable test method for cleaning validation. So those are the things you look out for. You also need to define your acceptance criteria as said. If it's a factory that holds equipment dirty for a period of time, let's say you manufacture campaigns, you only clean after 10 batches, you only clean after 20 batches. That is, you now need to define your dirty holding time and your clean holding time. So you clean an equipment on a Friday, or you need to define your cleaning validation. So you carry out exercises that will define all that during your cleaning procedure. So this is a table that defines how to pick your worst case product. So your worst case product criteria, you look at toxicity of the raw materials in that product. So I have Fanta and Coke. I'm using Fanta and Coke for easy references. Fanta has an orange color. Coke has caramel, brownish color. Now the dye in Fanta might not be soluble in water, but the dye in Coke, caramel, is soluble in water. So I can easily clean that manufacturing plant with water. But if I'm saying that's the only cleaning procedure I have, you might not be able to clean the Fanta. So I need to look at the solubility of my raw materials in that formulation, that worst case product. What is the solubility? And you have a guide as to what the solubility ratios are. So the one with the least solubility becomes your worst case product. I hope I'm making sense at this point. Now, you also look at toxicity. Toxicity is where you are dealing with oral products. I mentioned Fanta. You want to be sure that the raw materials in your product, you have considered their toxicity level as against the cleaning procedure. So you must be sure that the cleaning procedure would remove the most toxic material from that surface. You also look at the size of the batch. There are some batches that are 5,000 kg. There are batches that are 2 kg. You'll be surprised that the 2 kg batch might have the worst case product. So you must be sure that you have also considered the batch size against other product batch sizes. Then you want to be sure of the lowest therapeutic dose. So for instance, paracetamol, when I was in my previous life in the pharmaceutical industry, paracetamol tablet contains 500 milligrams in one tablet, while Lexotan contains 1 milligram in a tablet. So, and we use the same vessels to manufacture paracetamol, and we use the same vessels to manufacture Lexotan. So imagine where I can clean my paracetamol 500 milligrams off the surface, but Lexotan has 1 milligram. So if I have 10% of 1 milligram, I have a therapeutic dose left on the surface. So my cleaning procedure must be able to remove that therapeutic dose from the surface. So you use this criteria to judge what your worst case product is from that manufacturing line. So this is an example of how you define your worst case product. You would have you have listed out the equipment. Now you list, for instance, you look at the collet mixer. For the collet mixer, in this case, they produce fancy that, they produce Swidon, they produce Relev Rapid, they produce Downhill. And you find out that the Downhill has 1 milligram nitrazepam, and it's the Fancida has, Fancida has 500 milligrams of active, but the artesunate has 50 milligrams. So you find out that the Fancida has a higher therapeutic dose than the artesunate. So you pick artesunate. But there are other criteria you have to look at. That's why you have the elements highlighted in blue to help you select which product becomes the worst case product on that equipment that you will now use as a cleaning validation for that equipment. So they must manufacture that equipment. So for the collet in this case, I have Fancida Swidon to that Relev. But if you look at the far right hand side, the worst case product selected is Swidon, because Swidon has the lowest solubility, it has the lowest therapeutic dose, it has its batch size is 165. So you see how we picked out the worst case products for that line. So I don't have to do clean validations for all the products. I just need to do clean validation for Swidon on this collet machine, and I can say that as far as it can clean Swidon, then it can clean every other product that is being manufactured on this line. So and this is another example of how to pick the worst case product from soaps. You have different variants, different colors, different actives, and then you now pick which one has the lowest, the label claim, the therapeutic dose, the batch size, and then the toxicity level. So for acceptance criteria for any cleaning validation, you must look at these critical elements. You have the visual checks, and the visual checks is not just looking at the surface and say it's clean. No. For visual checks, you must check for perfumes, you must check for colorants, you must check for foreign matters, you must check that the surface is dry. So some people say, I've cleaned this equipment and the surface is clean. It's the rinsewater I'm seeing. I'm seeing a drop of water. That water might contain 1 milligram of the active and you're not seeing it. So it is not just that the surface is wet and clean. It must be dry. So that's part of visual checks in a clean validation. Your microbial load, if it's a product that is microbiologically susceptible, you want to check the microbial load of that equipment surface, because you don't want to introduce microbes into the next product. You want to use product residue as an evidence that the cleaning process has been effective. So for instance, I manufacture, let's say for instance, Lexotan, which is 1 milligram. And I want to use that same equipment to manufacture paracetamol, like I said. I want to be sure that I have removed all traces of Lexotan on that surface. So I'll use the product residue. And in this case, the product residue will be active ingredient in Lexotan, which is bromazepam. Then once I manufacture Lexotan, I clean up the equipment. I will be checking for traces of Lexotan on the surface of the equipment. Then once I'm done with that, I go to the next product. So I want to define acceptance criteria for the level of Lexotan I would not want to see beyond. So you don't need to see more than 10 ppm as rule of thumb for the product residue in the product. Now, for products that you use detergents or solvents to clean, you also want to be sure that you have removed that solvent. Imagine where you went to somebody's house and the person gave you want to drink water, the person gave you a cup to drink water. And by the time you just put that cup in your mouth, you're perceiving taste of soap or Omo. Because the person wants to prove that you clean the cup very well. You are perceiving taste of soap on Omo. That cleaning is not properly done. So the same thing you want to do on your manufacturing floor. You want to be sure that the residues of both the products and the solvents that were used in the cleaning have been taken off the surface before you do the next manufacturing. So these are elements you use for your acceptance criteria. And once that is done, you write your report against your observations. We look at the whys, we look at the whats, we look at the how, and we look at the when. So we are looking at the when now. So validation can be done prospectively, can be done concurrently, can be done retrospectively, and you also need to define periods for validation. You don't just validate once and say it's validated forever. There are periods for validation. So what is prospective validation? Prospective validation is the validation you do prior to implementation. So I have an equipment I just bought. I just bought a phone. I have to check all these things, whether the phone, they work safe. Does it have, if I connect the battery, connect this thing, does it come on, or does it take 5 years to come on? I'm doing some validation before I start using the phone. The same thing in manufacturing equipment. You have not started commercial batches for that manufacturing equipment, but you want to be sure that this equipment will deliver as expected. So you can do trial runs. You can use trial batches to check the equipment that it can deliver as expected. That is a prospective validation. You have not started using it for commercial purposes. Concurrent validation is when you are using it for the purpose for which it is meant for, and you are doing your validational checks at the same time. So that's concurrent at the same time. You're doing it at the same time when you are using the equipment. Retrospectively, I have never validated this equipment before. And this equipment has been used for the past 10 years. Someone says, I cannot validate it. No, you can still do a form of validation. So you look at data. Most times you rely on historical data to check the performance of that equipment. And then you can still do some operational checks and performance checks for that equipment. That's how you do retrospective validation. Now, for evaluation, you need to define what are the conditions for you to revalidate. So, based on the risk-based approach, you can say, if I do my test method validation and nothing changes, the next time I'll validate this test method is in the next 5 years, if nothing changes. But if something changes in my test method, I would have to revalidate immediately. So if I change, for instance, a chromatographic method, an HPLC method, I'm detecting the wavelength, I'm detecting the absorbance at a wavelength, the peak areas at a wavelength of 200 nanometers. And I all of a sudden change that wavelength to 230 nanometers. I need to revalidate. If it's the manufacturing equipment, I used to mix with a blade, a mixing head that has a blade. But I change from a mixing head that has a blade to a paddle. I need to validate immediately. For a formulation, I have a manufacturing process that has raw materials, and I change the active ingredient in that raw material. I need to revalidate that manufacturing process that it will constantly give me what it's supposed to give. I also need to revalidate the test method that it will also determine exactly what it's supposed to determine. So there are different conditions here that would necessitate an immediate revalidation of a validated system. And there are conditions for which you would also define that if nothing happens, these are the periods for which you would do your revalidation. So all this needs to come into either for your periodic revalidation, you need to define your validation master plan, and your protocol too can also capture all that. So these are references I've used during the course of this study, and I hope I wasn't too fast to explain most of those things, but I want us to create time to look at your questions. Thank you very much, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kingsley.
So
I know it's time is one of our major factor, But I've seen so many questions, especially the questions of if you would be able to send us the slides. I know the slides has some contents you might not want to share, but maybe you would help us edit it and you share with us, because so many people have asked if they will get the slides. So yes, I think we would find a way around it so that everyone. So as long as you registered and we have your email, you get the slides. Yeah. So now the questions. You have so many questions, man. So I'll start from because Julius has been raising his hand like forever. So let me start from his question so that I don't get. He knows my house. Let me not get attacked. So they said, please, can you confirm that manufacturing equipments only go through the cycle of DQ to IQ, while manufacturing process, that's I think he's talking about process validation and processes, or manufacturing process goes through the complete cycle. I don't know if you get it. He's asking equipments go through just DQ to IQ, while manufacturing process goes through the complete cycle.
So there are different, you're talking about two different things now. Like I said, qualification and validation.
Yes.
So for manufacturing equipment, you're talking about qualification. And then for equipment, you have this complete cycle, which starts from DQ, IQ, OQ, and PQ. For some people, they put DIOP, DIOP. So it must complete that cycle of DIOP, design, installation, operation, and performance. It doesn't stop at I, please. It doesn't stop at I, it stops at P. So once you have that complete cycle, then you can claim that you have validated that equipment, or qualified that equipment rather. Am I making sense? Then for the manufacturing process, it's a process of validating end to end. So Dominic, you want to say something?
Okay, no, when you're done, I wanted Julius to clarify but when you're done, I wanted Julius to clarify if you were answering what he asked. Yes.
All right. Okay. All right. So for equipment, it's qualification, and it goes through the life cycle of design, operation, installation, operation, and performance. But for manufacturing process itself, I think what you're trying to ask is that should your equipment be qualified before you even talk about manufacturing the process? Yes, ideally, but it's not a rule of thumb that it must be, but ideally, yes, because it gives you more confidence that yes, whatever you're now getting out of the manufacturing process is not, whatever deviation you might encounter during manufacturing is not as a result of any of the faults from your equipment. So you need to qualify your equipment before you go into your manufacturing process. So for the manufacturing process, it does not go through IQ, OQ, PQ, no. The manufacturing process only looks at your process and picks out critical that needs to be checked based on the stage of that manufacturing process. So for mixing, for instance, you mix, you dispense, and then you package. So for your mixing, what do you want to check? Do you want to check homogeneity or you want to check appearance? For the packaging now, that's dispensing. You're dispensing per SKU. Do you want to just check that it delivered the right SKU, or you want to check that it delivered the right SKU and it also delivered the right quality? So you check the volume versus the quality of the product in the packed material. Then in the packaging format, you want to check that the quality, the aesthetics of the product is not compromised. So you see that manufacturing process is now dependent on your own specific process in your own site. So you define critical control points of that process, and based on using a risk-based approach, and then you now define your own acceptance criteria for that check. So that's what you do for a manufacturing process. But for equipment, you go through DIO. You can unmute yourself, Julius, and confirm if I've answered your question.
Yeah, Julius, I think you should. Yeah.
Yes, I think you have clarified the point, because in that process validation step you gave, or I saw when you wrote that manufacturing equipment and laboratory equipment only goes, it was written as if it goes through only EQ to IQ. So that's why I asked that question, but I think the explanation is very, very clear. That's what I was expecting. So there was the second question.
Okay, so I think we might need to join back because we still have some questions. So Julius, we are saying the second question,
Okay.
right?
Will you for me?
Yeah.
So that's the second one.
Dom, do you want us to join again so that
Yeah, we